Imagine this for a second. What if a film gets a standing ovation at Cannes, gets shortlisted for an Oscar, but back home, it's a total box office disaster, just mired in controversy? Well, that's the wild story of Homebound. It's this landmark of contradictions in Indian cinema, and that's exactly what we're going to unpack today.
So let's talk about the Homebound paradox. This film was celebrated by some and, completely condemned by others. How does that even happen? How can one single film be this source of incredible artistic pride, but also just profound failure, both ethically and commercially? That's the central paradox we're digging into.
And this slide, wow, it just lays it all out, doesn't it? On one side, you've got the prestige. We're talking standing ovations at Cannes, an Oscar shortlist. The absolute pinnacle of success. But then you look at the other side, the price. It was a box office flop, and even worse, it was hit with these really serious allegations of exploitation. So the question is, how do these two completely different realities exist for the same exact movie?
Right, so that's the big question we're going to try and answer. How did one of the most celebrated films of the year become its biggest paradox? It is such a fascinating story, touching on art, ambition, ethics, and of course, the brutal, unforgiving realities of the film industry. Let's get into it. All right, so to really get our heads around this whole paradox, we've got to go back to the beginning. We need to look at how this masterpiece was even made. Believe it or not, it all started with a simple news report. But a few key, really brilliant creative decisions turned that report into the acclaimed cinema we're talking about.
Okay, so check this out. The source material was a factual New York Times story about migrant workers. But here's the first big shift. The filmmakers changed the main characters from textile workers into people trying to become police officers. Now, that might sound like a small change, but it's not. It completely shifted the theme. The story went from being about basic economic survival to this much deeper search for institutional dignity.
And this quote right here, it gets to the absolute heart of that change. Their ambition was to escape the ignominy of their identities and stand tall among people who take issue with their very names. See, they weren't just after a job. They were chasing respect. They believed that a uniform could somehow erase the prejudice they faced and let them finally, stand tall. That's a way more powerful engine for a story.
And get this, the artistic vision had some serious heavyweight backing. None other than Martin Scorsese was an executive producer. But he wasn't just a name on a poster. He personally mentored the director, Neeraj Ghaywan, and gave feedback on 3 different cuts of the film. People say it was Scorsese's influence that really pushed for that unflinching, realist tone, which, as you can imagine, is exactly the kind of thing that international festivals absolutely love.
And because of that raw, realist approach, the film became this incredible mirror, reflecting all these social fissures in India. It wasn't just a story anymore. It was an exploration of the quiet cruelty of everyday prejudice, the kind of stuff that just simmers right below the surface.
Now, to really understand the insane challenge these characters were up against, I want you to just think about one number: 700. What on earth could that mean when you're chasing a dream like theirs?
Well, here it is. Their odds of success? 1 job for every 700 applicants. 1 in 700. It's just staggering. The film does such a powerful job of dismantling this whole idea of meritocracy, right? It shows that when the odds are stacked that high against you, the system isn't just hard, it's almost mathematically designed for you to fail.
But, and this is a big but, for all its artistic success in showing injustice on screen, the film started facing accusations of creating injustice behind the scenes. And this is where the whole story takes a really dark turn. We're moving from the film itself to the ethical shadow hanging over it.
Which leads us to this really tough question, not just for this film, but for any film based on a true story. What is the true cost of telling someone else's story? When you take someone's real-life struggle and turn it into art, what exactly do you owe them? And what happens when that line gets blurred?
So, here are the allegations laid out. First, a plagiarism claim from an author, which the producers called baseless and unfounded. But the other one, subject exploitation, that one really stuck. The family of the real person who inspired one of the main characters came forward. They said they were only paid 10,000 rupees, and, this is the real kicker, they didn't even know the film had been released. They were totally in the dark.
And that brings us to the core of the ethical problem. Are filmmakers truly standing by the lives they portray, or are they just exploiting them for cinematic gain? It's a huge question. You have this film that's all about critiquing exploitation, but then it's being accused of doing the exact same thing. It really complicates things, doesn't it? Okay, so you've got this ethical shadow, and on top of that, you've got massive market problems. So alongside all the controversy, another huge disconnect was happening. This time, it was between the prestige and the profit, between what the critics absolutely adored and what audiences were actually willing to pay for. Let's just be crystal clear about its global triumph, though. On the world stage, this film was a giant. Standing ovations at Cannes and TIFF. It was India's official entry for the Academy Awards, and it actually made the Oscar shortlist. That is a huge, huge deal.
But back home, a completely different story. Its lifetime domestic box office was just 4.58 crore rupees. In the world of Indian cinema, that's a flop. A big one. The difference is just, it's jaw-dropping.
And this chart really paints the picture, doesn't it? Look at that. The international critical acclaim is through the roof, while the domestic box office is barely there. It's not just a gap, it's a canyon, a massive chasm between the two. So why did it bomb so hard at home? Well, people said it wasn't just that audiences didn't like it. The failure was blamed on bigger, systemic issues. Things like flawed distribution and just a simple lack of screens for what's called serious social cinema, in an industry that's pretty much built on entertainment and escapism. Okay, so let's try to put all these contradictory pieces together. The amazing art, the messy ethics, the disappointing economics. What's the final verdict on Homebound? What is this film's legacy at the end of the day?
Well, it really feels like it's a story of two halves. You've got the art, a truly powerful work of social realism that brilliantly deconstructs the idea of dignity. And then you have the caution, a story of commercial failure and ethical controversy that, honestly, just mars its own message. Both are true. And because of that deep contradiction, Homebound is way more than just a movie. It serves as a critical litmus test for an industry that's really at a crossroads. It forces everyone to ask a very uncomfortable question. Is the way we make and sell movies fundamentally broken when it comes to telling the stories that matter most?
Which leaves us with this. One last, really important question. Can urgent stories survive the box office? It's a question that's so much bigger than just Homebound. It's about the future of cinema itself. In a world that's all about profit, can these tough, uncomfortable, but truly important stories ever really find a way to survive?